Current events in the Haftorah. It's just amazing. Before we get to that, this week in America, Benjamin, they had a total eclipse of the sun, once in 100 years. So what does the Talmud tell us about that, Avi? The Gemara in Sukkah, page 29 says, Shachama loka, when the moon is struck, when the sun is struck by the moon. The Talmud knew that 2,000 years ago, that the moon will black out the sun. That's exactly what took place this week. So Talmud in Sukkah 29 says, when the moon is struck, blacked out by the sun, Siman Ra, L'Sonei Yisrael. It's a bad sign for the Jew haters of the world. The EU and the UN, beware. And all the Nazis in America and all the lefties who hate Israel, beware. It's a bad sign. Because the nations of the world are compared to the sun. And Israel's compared to the moon. Yeah. Blue moon. We're like the moon. We're the great comeback kid. Looks like we're about to disappear in blackness, so we rejuvenate ourselves. So when the moon blacks out the sun, says the Talmud in Sukkah 29, it means the Jew haters are going down. Okay. Yeah. The pagans, the idol worshippers, the Jew haters are going to be what? Blacked out. Yeah. Now, the Talmud gives an amazing reason of why is there a solar eclipse. So the Talmud says, Mishkav Zohor. Isn't that incredible, Avi? When homosexuality becomes fashionable, when homosexuality becomes moral, and becomes what? The in, that's when the eclipse happens, and that's a sign that America is going down the tubes. Tractate Sukkah, page 29. You can look it up. America's going down the tubes. The Jews in America have to wake up, Avi, just like the Jews in Europe. Right? The bold, brash sun, the symbol of the arrogance of what? Of the Umat HaOlam, the nations of the world who hate Israel. Their time has passed. Good. Okay, now in the Haftorah, fasten your seatbelts, in the book of Isaiah 52, Pasuk 2, we're going to read it this Shabbos. Yeshayahu Nun Bet, Pasuk Bet. It's unbelievable that you don't have to read the Jerusalem Post. Isaiah 52:2. Hitnari me'afar. Jerusalem, shake off your dust. Rise and shine and shake up your dust. Shake off your dust. What does that mean? Well, if you read the Jerusalem Post, in the city of David, archaeologists have uncovered, buried under who knows how many layers of dust and dirt, palaces of the kings of Yehuda. So the very week that we read this Haftorah, Evelyn, Isaiah 52:2, where God says, Jerusalem, rise, shake off your dust and your dirt. The very week archaeologists in the city of David, Avi, have uncovered palaces of the Malchei Yehuda that have been covered by layers of afar. And that's the week we read this Haftorah. Jerusalem, get up and shake off your dust. Reveal in front of our eyes. The prophecy is coming in front of our eyes. Right? It was covered until dust until now. But now is the time, says Isaiah, shake off your dust. Reveal your glorious past. When we know we have a glorious past, Avi, we know we're in store for a glorious future. Powerful message of the Torah, Isaiah 52. In the Parshat, this Parsha is always read the first Shabbos in Elul. Shof'tim v'shotrim titein lecha. Now the Ariya Kodesh, who knew Hebrew, says that's not proper digduk. You should have said Shof'tim v'shotrim titnu lochem. Avi, you know Hebrew better than me. If you start out with the plural, why do you switch to the singular? Shof'tim v'shotrim, policemen and judges, it should have said titnu lochem. But in the middle of a sentence, Abraham, God switches tense. God knows Ulpan 103. How come it says Shof'tim v'shotrim titein lecha and not lochem? Why switch tenses in the middle of a verse, says the Ariya Kodesh? Parshat Shof'tim is always read, Avi, the first Shabbos in Elul. The tafkid of Elul, that every person should be a shofet and a shoter on himself. Shof'tim v'shotrim. Policemen and judges, titein lecha. Not on your neighbor. L'cha, look in the mirror. The month of Elul is to police and judge the guy in the mirror, which is a very painful process to do that. But that is the tafkid of the month of Elul, to judge ourselves how we can improve. Shof'tim v'shof'tim titein l'cha, not lachem. And right after that, it says, Lo sita l'cha asherah. Don't plant any trees on the Temple Mount. What does A got to do with B? What does policing and judging yourself got to do? Devarim 16, verse 21, do not plant any Asherah tree, any huge tree on Temple Mount, and don't set up any pillars. We know when the psukim are next door, there has to be a connection. What does judging and police yourself got to do? Don't plant any huge trees on Temple Mount, and don't set up any pillars to Hashem. Beautiful, Sarah. You're ahead of me. If you want to judge and police yourself, if you want to improve yourself, you can't judge yourself if you're stuck up like a matzeva, if you're stuck up like a tree. Arrogance is the granddaddy of all sin. So if you want to get off and judge yourself properly, don't make yourself into a Asherah tree. Don't make yourself into a matzeva. Get off your high horse. Humble yourself. A little humility. Otherwise, you're not able to judge and police yourself. Therefore, these psukim are what? In order. Person's high and mighty like an Asherah, like a matzeva, he'll never do tshuva. The granddaddy of all sin is what? Arrogance and pride. And the granddaddy of tshuva is what? Humility. That's pretty amazing, right? Don't set up a pillar to serve Hashem. Only a mizbeach. What's the difference? Pillar, mizbeach. A pillar is where you sacrifice to Hashem on one huge rock. And a mizbeach is made up of many rocks. I am a rock. What's the message, says Rav Kook? We ain't got no mizbeach today. So Rashi wonders, didn't Yaakov Avinu set up a pillar to worship Hashem? So why is it forbidden now and Yaakov was allowed to do it? And now, when we have a Beis HaMikdash again, the Mizbeach can only be many stones, it can't be one pillar. So how come the forefathers did it? Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov did sacrifice on one pillar, and the Mizbeach for the Jewish people can only be many rocks. What difference does it make? The Torah is eternal. Avi, the Torah is not ancient history, says the great holy Rav Kook. Now hear this. The Avot, the forefathers, they were individuals. So they could serve God on one pillar. They had no nation. Individuals do it my way or the highway. Individuals. But after the Jewish people were formed and we have the Torah, you can only worship God on a Mizbeach with many stones, symbolizing there are many ways to get to God. No one can say my way or the highway. At Matan Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu set up 12 stones. Right? 12 stones. Symbolizing that now no one has a monopoly on God. There's at least 12 paths to serve Hashem. The Ramban says like the spokes of a wheel. There's many spokes, but they all lead to the center. So there are 12 tribes of Israel. Each tribe had their own color, their own flag, their own nusach, how do you say, their own style. See, God loves variety. There isn't one tribe, there are 12 tribes. And there are many, many different nations. And no one has a monopoly on God. There are many ways to get to the truth, and that's symbolized by a mizbeach, an altar which is composed of what? Many stones, not one stone. A powerful message over here. A very powerful message. Now, the Torah goes on and speaks about what? About testimony capital cases can only be 2 witnesses. 2 witnesses. If you have 1 witness, it's not good. It has to be what? It has to be 2 witnesses, right? And the witnesses have to be what? Male. A female cannot testify in court. Isn't that strange? What do we discriminate, Dr. Abramson? Huh? Why do women do not testify in court? I mean, a woman is believed to say that she bought kosher meat. How do you trust your wife? She went to the mikveh. Maybe she bought A&P chicken. So a woman is believed, right? But they don't come to testify in court. Why? Chas v'shalom, Kani.
What'd she say?
Chas v'shalom. You know what the Rambam says, Kani? I'm glad you came today. Is the king of Israel a second-class citizen? The Rambam in Laws of Kings, chapter 3, says, a king of Israel is also not permitted to come and testify in court because it's below his dignity. It's pasnish, because when you come to court and you testify, the Sanhedrin and the lawyers tear you apart. Right? Remember Dragnet under the spotlight?
Remember Effley
Bailey. What he did to poor Mark Furman in the OJ trial. How he tore him apart. Effley Bailey made mincemeat out of him. Ooh, Yehuda, no coinky dinky. We saw that. Made mincemeat out of him. So the Rambam in the Laws of Kings chapter 3 says, the same reason you don't call a woman, you don't call a king. It's beneath their dignity. The public cross-examination, the interrogation, and the Jewish women are called Bas Melech. Look at Psalm, Connie, Psalm 45, verse 14. Every Jewish woman is called a Bat Melech. Look it up. Psalm 45, 14, Goldie. You're writing that. You and every Jewish woman is called a Bas Melech. How do you say that in English? Daughter of the king. So the Rambam in the Laws of Kings says, just like a king is not permitted to testify in court, it's below his dignity to be publicly cross-examined and interrogated by Effley Bailey or Alan Dershowitz. So the same reason, every Jewish woman is the daughter of the king.
That's right.
Aren't you glad you came today? And that's why she's not permitted to testify in court. Who knows this, Connie? Good thing you came today. Right? Right? Below the, right? The royalty. So the same reason the king doesn't testify in court is the same reason that a woman does not testify in court. But of course, privately, she's believed, right? You don't have to check her. She said she bought kosher chicken. Maybe she went to A&P. No, you trust her, right? And as far as counting the clean days and when she went to the mikveh, we don't check her, but she's believed. The Torah gave the entire Taharas Mishpacha into the hands of a woman. The purity of the Jewish life and family is given over to what? To women. Is given over to women. Isn't that incredible? I'll take it a step further. There are 3 mitzvahs that women are what? Specifically speak to women. Chala, Nida, Hadlokas Haneh. You look in Masechta Shabbat, in the Mishnah Shabbat, there are 3 mitzvot that speak specifically to the Jewish women. Chala, Nida, Hadlokas Haneh. Chala means what?
Bread.
When you bake bread, you separate the dough. Nida means the family purity laws. And Adlakas Haneros means what? Lighting candles on Friday night. Why those 3 mitzvahs are given exclusively to women? Are you sitting down, Yisrael Baruch? If you want to sum up the entire Jewish religion, it's Kedushas Hazman, Kedushas HaMakoim, Kedushas HaGuf. Any mitzvah of the 613 is either to sanctify time, to sanctify place, or to sanctify what? Body. Thank you. Any mitzvah, the 613, the purpose of the mitzvah is either to sanctify the place, to sanctify the body, or to sanctify what? Time is on my side. Stay tuned. Don't rush me. These three mitzvahs, Connie, sum up the Jewish religion. Where is challah baked? In the home. My mother used to bake challah in the home and separate challah. Through the mitzvah of afroshas challah, the Jewish wife is what? Sanctifying the place. My home becomes holy. Where I bake bread, it's not a mundane act. Where I bake bread and eat bread, through the mitzvah of challah, my home, where the challah is baked, becomes sanctified. So challah is kedushas what? Hamakom. When the lady lights candles Friday night, kedushas hazman, Connie, you ladies, not me, you sanctify time, kill time, waste time. Kedushas hazman. When the lady lights the candles Friday night, she's sanctifying time. And the third pillar of Judaism, sanctifying the body. When the lady goes to the mikveh, she's sanctifying her guf. She's making the sex act holy. Becomes kiddushin. So these three mitzvahs are given over to ladies because that's the entire Jewish religion, Avi, in a nutshell. Kedushas hamakom, challah. Kedushas hazman, nerot. Right? And kedushas haguf, nida. The laws of nida. Through the laws of family purity, the Jewish lady is sanctifying not just her soul, but her body. She's turning the sex act into something holy. So you ladies got it over us, okay? You have to know that. You have to know that, right? Now, in the Parshat, there's a mitzvah to appoint a king. There's a positive mitzvah, soim tosum alecha melech. Just like there's a mitzvah in the Torah to put on tefillin, there's a mitzvah to blow shofar, there's a mitzvah to eat matzah when? On Pesach, there's a mitzvah to appoint this week's Parshat, Devarim 17:15. There's a positive mitzvah to appoint a king. And Rav Kook says, Sarah, every time you vote for a prime minister in Israel, you're doing the mitzvah, soim tosum alecha melech. So it's important to vote in Jewish elections. Yiddish Benyamin, Rav Kook said that every time you vote for a Jewish prime minister in the state of Israel, you're doing this mitzvah of appointing a king, because the closest thing we have to a king is what? It's a prime minister.
There's no prime ministers in Rav Kook's time.
The son, hello, the son who died in 1982. Thought he got me there. Rav Kook's son, Tzvi Yehuda, he died in 1982. There are plenty of prime ministers in 1982 when he died. So that's what he's saying. But now the question is, Reb Nachum, if it's a mitzvah to appoint a king, why was God so upset when they asked Shmuel for what? For a king? Huh? So the Rambam gives Sarah's answer, because they wanted a king like all the other nations. They wanted a king like all the other nations. Samuel was too Haredi for them. He closed all the discos and the nightclubs. They wanted a king. They figured a king would what? Ease up on them. Okay?
Rather than Hashem?
Wait a minute, but there's a mitzvah to appoint a king. So Sarah gave the Rambam's answer. They didn't mean it lishma. They meant it what? Samuel was too strict with them, the prophet, you know. The king would be more modern, you know, and maybe open up some clubs.
Open the stores of Shabbos.
No.
Sell the
So that's the Rambam's answer. The problem is, if you look in Pesachim 50 and Tainus 7, the Talmud says a person should always do mitzvahs, afilu shelo lishma. Shebatol shelo lishma, ba lishma. Tainus 7, Pesachim 50. A person should always do mitzvahs even for the wrong reasons. Because eventually you'll graduate and do it what? For the right reasons. Nike, just do it. So the question is, who cares what their motives were? They wanted to do a mitzvah. I don't care what my motive is. Nike, just do it. Avi, just do it. Talmud says you should always do mitzvahs, even shalol lishma. Eventually you'll do it for the right reasons. So what was the problem? Why was God so upset?
He's jealous.
But it's a mitzvah, Elisheva. It's a mitzvah, like there's a mitzvah for a lady to go to the mikvah, and there's a mitzvah to eat matzah on Pesach, there's a mitzvah, and to keep Shabbat, a mitzvah to appoint the king. So Sarah gave Rambam's answer. They didn't mean it. They meant their own what? Selfish reasons. So who cares? The name of the game is a person should always do mitzvahs afilu shalol lishma. Just do it. So the answer is, powerful answer. You remember back at the burning bush, Rashi says for a whole week, God tried to convince Moshe Rabbeinu to take the job, a double pension, lawgiver and redeemer. So you get 2 checks. Lawgiver, redeemer. For a whole week he argued with him, he tried to convince him, and he refused. Says Rashi back in Exodus 4, why did he refuse? Because he thought that what? That his older brother Aaron would be upset. Moshe wasn't around. Remember, he was in Midian. Who was in charge of the Jewish people in the slime pits? It was Aaron. Moshe was not there. He was on the lam, right? He comes back after who knows how many years, and he tells his older brother, step aside, I'm taking over. He felt his older brother would resent him, be jealous of him, be upset. So therefore, he had a right to refuse God's command of being lawgiver and redeemer, because it might upset his older brother. Only when God told him, the samach belibo, remember that, Benjamin? The samach belibo. Not like you think. Your older brother will not begrudge you. He's happy for you. He doesn't resent you. He's not jealous, and only God could know that. Only when God told him that, Moshe said, where do I sign? I want a double pension.
Right.
Lawgiver and redeemer. So what do you see from here? What do you see from here?
She said Hashem is our king. Hashem is our king.
But it's a mitzvah, Sarah. It's a mitzvah to appoint a king. Like putting on tefillin, like eating kosher. So it's a mitzvah to appoint a king. But the question is, the problem is here. They came to Samuel, they said, we don't want you anymore. We want a king. God felt the pain of Shmuel Hanavi. He felt his rejection. Shmuel Hanavi, what am I, a shmata? What am I, a dish rag? You put me out to pasture? It's a mitzvah to appoint a king. But they should have waited until Samuel dies. Make sure my mitzvah does not step and put another Jew down. Then God says, I don't need your mitzvah. If my mitzvah is going to cause pain and anguish to another Jew, God says, who needs your mitzvah? So if they would have waited, that's the real reason why God was upset. God said, don't feel bad, Shmuel. They didn't reject you. Who did they reject?
Hashem.
Me. But they didn't reject Hashem.
Samuel.
They didn't reject Hashem. They rejected Samuel. They didn't reject God, but God felt his pain. He said, my dear son Samuel, they didn't reject you, even though they did. They rejected me. So God changed the truth for Shalom, to take away Samuel's pain. So God told him a little white lie. They didn't reject you, Samuel, which they really did, but rejected me, which was not so. So that's the answer. The answer is Derech Eretz Kodma LaTorah. The Torah is important, but menschlichkeit, how do you say that in English? Menschlichkeit, decency, courtesy, proper manners, respect comes before the Torah. So Moshe refused for a week, and therefore God was upset with the Jewish people. Even though it's a mitzvah, the timing was wrong. What they say in real estate, timing. They should have waited until Shmuel what? Dies, and then asked for a king. Isn't that a credible idea?
Yeah.
God feels our pain and our anguish. So he changed the truth They didn't reject him, they rejected Samuel. But you look in the book of Samuel, he says, no, they didn't reject you, Samuel, they rejected me. Don't feel bad. What a powerful message.
He was his prophet.
What? He felt his pain. God feels our pain. Imo enochi b'tzarat, Psalm 91. God feels our pain, and he suffers along with the Jewish people. He suffers along with the Jewish people, right? So here there's a mitzvah in Deuteronomy 18:13. How do you know you're not allowed to go to Gene Dixon? Remember Gene Dixon?
Because Samuel did.
Astrology. You're not allowed to go to a astrologer, even though they might tell you the truth. You're not allowed to go there. Deuteronomy 18:13 says you shall be wholehearted with Hashem your God. Walk with him in complete what? Trust. And don't try to find out the future. But whatever comes on you, accept it wholeheartedly. So even though astrologers or crystal ball ladies might see, in the stars, they might get a message, a Jewish person is not permitted to what? Because you're lowering yourself. You have a direct relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why do you have to go to a medium? The stars are also created by God. God created the whole zodiac system. But what do you need a middleman for? Jews don't like middlemen, directly, right? Yeah. You're lowering yourself. Trust in Hashem, and that's it. Now, Elisheva asked a bomb kasha from Bomland. How was Saul allowed to go to the witch of Endor? Didn't you ask that question?
He did.
He went to the witch of Endor. Sorcery is against the Jewish religion, and a sorcerer is a capital punishment. Right? Machashefa lo techayeh. Don't allow a witch to live. So Elisheva hit a home run, and she asked, Shaul HaMelech was the Orthodox king. I think it was Haredi, no? So what right did he have to what? To consult the witch of Endor. That's against the Torah. That's a bomb kasha.
He paid.
So what? You can't consult a witch. It's against the Torah. How did he get away with it? So the Talmud explains as follows. He fell out of grace with Hashem, right? He asked Hashem, he was a prophet himself. God wouldn't answer him. Then he went to the Urim and Vitumim, that the Kohen Gadol breastplate. He got no answer. He was totally cut off from Hashem. But still, that's no right to go to a witch to raise up the soul of what? Of Samuel. See, witches can't do that. It's amazing. The Koyach HaTumah, Benjamin, the Koyach HaTumah, God gives the Koyach HaTumah that power. Otherwise, there'd be no free will. It's powers of the dark side, which God gives it in order to what? Free choice to operate. So why was he allowed to do it? So the Talmud explains as follows. There was a war coming. The Plishtim were about to attack. He didn't know, should he, like the 6-day war, Yehuda, should he preempt or should he wait for the Palestinians to attack? Look in the book of Samuel. Look in the book of Samuel. It's all there. Samuel 1. There was questions of lives at stake. The lives of the IDF soldiers. Do I what? Attack first, putting many IDF soldiers at risk to get killed? Or do I wait until the Plishtim what? Attack me and then what? Defensive posture. There was a question of Bekuach Nefesh, Benjamin. Bekuach Nefesh, Doiche Kol HaTorah Kula, Masha. If your life is in danger, if one Jewish life is in danger, any life is in danger, let alone the whole IDF. You're supposed to eat on Yom Kippur, you're supposed to desecrate the Shabbos, and you're supposed to consult the witch of Endor.
No, Rabbi.
Don't contradict your rabbi. You asked a great question, I'm giving you an answer. Elisheva, you asked a bomb question. If it means saving the life of one IDF soldier, you're supposed to eat on Yom Kippur, desecrate the Shabbos, and even consult the witch of Endor to bring up the spirit of Samuel. The prophet will tell you, go to war or not. Put these lives at risk or not. It's Bekuach Nefesh, Benjamin. If you're allowed to eat on Yom Kippur Bekuach Nefesh, then you're certainly allowed to go to the witch of Endor. The Kuach Nefesh, Doicha Kol HaTorah Kula Kani, except what? The 3 cardinal sins. Right? Idolatry, murder, and sexual immorality. But consulting a witch, it's against the Torah, but it's like eating on Yom Kippur, which you have to do, Avi, if what? If lives are in danger. If a life is at stake, what's the greatest mitzvah in the Torah, Avi? Staying alive, staying alive.
If a life is at stake.
If a life is at stake. And these lives were at stake. Commit the troops, wait. So Samuel came from beyond the grave. The Talmud says Samuel was the only prophet who prophesied after he was dead. Should I repeat that? Good question. Of all the prophets in the Bible, which is the only prophet who prophesied even after he was dead? Samuel. Remember the witch raised him up? He came back and he told Shaul HaMelech, commit the troops, preempt, like in the 6-day war, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. Samuel said, tomorrow at this time, you and your sons will be with me. Meaning that what? The good news and the bad news? Remember, is there baseball in heaven? What's the good news? There is. What's the bad news? You're pitching. You're pitching tomorrow.
The umpires are all in Gehenna.
Right. But you hear this? Commit the troops, preempt. That's what Hashem is telling me from beyond the grave. But you should know you and your sons will be with me tomorrow. Is that a bad tiding? Well, in a way, it's a bad tiding. They'll be killed in the war, but they'll be in the same mechitza of Shmuel Hanavi.
Wow.
Rashi says, with me, b'mechitza shali. Can you imagine? To be in the Olam Haba in the box seat with Samuel. That's a box seat. You can't get any closer. So the greatness of Shaul is he could have skedaddled. He could have ran out of town. Right? He could have ran to somewhere, But no, he listened to the Navi. He went to war knowing he's going to get killed. But that's what the Navi told him. And that was his kapara. That was his kapara. That was his kapara. He listened to the Navi. And his death was his atonement. He died violently. And therefore, in the afterlife, he joins what? He joins Shmuel Hanavi in the afterlife.
And he got back into God's good graces because he'd fallen out.
That's right. So because he died violently, therefore what? Therefore what? That's his atonement. And his sins have been atoned for, and he goes to the same level in Olam above, what? And this will answer Abraham's bomb kasha that he asked me before this year. I didn't plan it, but I believed in it. Avram asked a great kasha. King David did not take revenge against Shimi ben Gera after Shimi ben Gera cursed him out. He says, leave him alone. God told him to curse. He didn't take revenge against him, right?
Yeah.
But on his deathbed, isn't that bizarre? On his deathbed, Masha, he tells his son Solomon, remember Shimi ben Gera, that SOB, how he cursed me out? Cursing a king is a capital punishment. Make sure that what? You punish him. So Rashi asked Abraham's kasha, what's going on? King David, you're so benevolent. You're so forgiving. When your bodyguard wanted to make Shimi a head shorter, you said, stop, leave him alone. I don't care what he says. God told him to curse. Now on his deathbed, he says to his son, make sure you punish Shimi ben Gera. So Rashi says, Shimi ben Gera was guilty of a capital crime, cursing the king. Capital crime. Terrible punishment. If he dies with his boots on, a natural death, Rashi says, Yipala Gehenom. He's going to go to Gehenom. Yeah. If he dies in an old age home with his boots on, peacefully he's going to go to Gehenom. Put him on trial by the Sanhedrin, not vigilante. not Charles Bronson. See, you can't study Tanakh without the Talmud. He told his son, make sure the Sanhedrin puts him on trial for Morid B'Malchus.
Yes.
Cursing a king is a capital punishment, rebellion to king. And this way, if the Bezdin executes him,
Casey or not?
he will go directly to Gan Eden.
That's it.
David felt sorry for the soul of what? Shibi ben Gera. He didn't want him to go to Gehenna. So if he dies peacefully, he'll go to Gehenna. If he dies violently, that's his kapara, says Rashi. He is rehabilitated, and he goes directly to Gan Eden. It wasn't revenge.
No. Mercy.
It was mercy for the soul of Shibi ben Gera.
Mashiach can get
Shimi ben Gera didn't tell him to knock him off. He told him, put him on trial with the Sanhedrin.
pay now.
And witnesses came and they heard him curse. So you can pay me now, Avi, or
I must be
you can pay me later. But no one gets away with anything. No one gets away with anything. So here in this week's Parshat, you have the first chaplain. When the Jews go to war, the Kohen HaMashiach, today it's called a chaplain, the Kohen HaMashiach HaMachama gives them a pep talk. In Devarim 20, Pasuk 1, 2, and 3, even today, right? When the IDF go to war, they get a pep talk. The chaplain, in the days of the temple, there was a king anointed, and you know what he would tell them? Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. You are going to war against your enemy. Don't be afraid. Don't show them any mercy, because they're sure as hell I'm not going to show you any mercy. God is with you, and he's fighting for you to save you from your enemies. Why do you say Shema Yisrael? Shema Yisrael. Says Rashi, quoting the Talmud, Afilu ein behem schut elo shma bilvad. Kedai atem sheshiatchem. Even if the only mitzvah that the IDF soldier does is what? He says the Shema, that's enough for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to what? To protect you and save you. Look how much God loves the IDF.
Yes.
The only mitzvah you do is Shema. If that's the only mitzvah you do, that's enough for the big boss to what? Protect and save you. Yiddish? Now, this is a true story. You can Google it. This happened during the Mechemet, what was the last Lebanon war? No, 2014, wasn't it? 2009? When was it? Not the Lebanon. The Gaza War. 2014, the Gaza War. The Gaza War.
I know the South.
In the Gaza War, yes, the IDF was fighting in Gaza. And as they went into battle, you know, a lot of them, the Gazan so-called citizens booby-trapped themselves with bombs. Evelyn, you know that. A lot of women, they strapped on bomb to themselves, and the soldiers would approach, they would what? Blow themselves up. My, they blow up so quickly. So these soldiers were approaching this woman who seemed to be an innocent civilian, but she had a bomb strapped to herself. You hear? And before they approached her, they said, Shema Yisrael. They said, Shema Yisrael. And what happened, Sarah? What happened? She cried. She said that she's a Jewish woman taken captive by the Arab and brainwashed. Many Jewish women, I don't have to tell you, Benjamin, many Jewish women who are taken captive by the Arabs, they brainwashed them, and they made her into a suicide bomber. When she heard the word Shema Yisrael, she said, I'm not doing this. So she saved herself and the lives of the IDF soldiers just because of what? Of the Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Isn't that incredible? You heard a story like it's a famous story that took place during the last Gaza war. You're right, during the last Gaza war. Now, the Torah says when you go to war, right? Lo techaya kol neshama. Very strange. Does the Torah say we should kill women and children? Very strange, right? So the Netziv in Amak Davar says that that's only those who are also against you in the war. The Netziv, who lived over 100 years ago, knew that the enemy is so vicious that sometimes they rig up their own women with what? With bombs. So then, in such a situation where the so-called civilians also become terrorists, so then you have no choice but to what? To kill them. Because my life comes first, right? My life comes first, right? And then the Torah speaks about what? When you besiege a city, you shouldn't chop down any fruit trees. You're not allowed to chop down any fruit trees. Ki adam eitz hasadeh. The human being, in Devarim 20, Pasuk 19, the human being is compared to what? A fruit tree. And the Maral says that even the body of a human being, Avi, looks like a tree. The trunk, and then the arms and the legs look like what? Limbs or branches, right? The human being is compared to a fruit tree. Why? Well, a tree, in order to grow, it's true, you have to have a lot of TLC, you know that. If you neglect your tree or your plants, they'll die. You have to talk to them. So a tree, just like a human being, in order to grow properly, Avi, you need a lot of TLC. Tender, loving care. If the tree is neglected, the human being is neglected, he won't grow properly. It's so true. And just like a tree gives off fruit, a human being has to what? Produce fruit. What are the fruit? Children, friends, good deeds, mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim. That is what? That is our fruit that we produce. Our body, our limbs, our branches. That's pretty incredible. So there's a law in the Torah not to chop down a fruit tree. If the tree stopped giving fruit, or if the tree is barren, and you need the space, then you're permitted to chop it down. But as long as it's giving off fruit, you should not destroy that tree. So the Talmud learns from this the law of Bal Tashchit. Not just a fruit tree, but anything that a human being can use should not be destroyed. Whatever a human being can use, we have to conserve God's beautiful world, right? Everything that has a constructive purpose should not be destroyed. You can destroy if you need it, what? For your personal benefit. But just stomp for no reason, like some people take a paper clip and they just play with it to destroy it. Not allowed to do that. If you need a paper clip, if you don't have a toothpick, so you need a paper clip, you can clean your teeth. But just to destroy for no reason, the Torah, what, prohibits that. And the example is not to chop down a fruit tree. If the tree is dead or stopped producing fruit, then you're permitted to cut it down. But al pi Kabbalah, even a tree that's barren, a Jewish person should not cut down. He should have it done through a non-Jew. So halachically, if the tree is dead or doesn't produce fruit, you're allowed to cut it down, no problem. But al pi Kabbalah, even a tree that's barren, a Jewish person should not cut down himself. He should have what? A non-Jewish person do it. And the end of the Parsha speaks about the strange ceremony of the Eglah Rufa. The Eglah Rufa, the calf that has a decapitated, right? What's it? So you find someone that's murdered in Israel, you don't know who killed him. So the town closest to what? To the murder victim has to bring an eglah and decapitate it, right? And then the Sanhedrin say, our hands did not spill this guy's blood. We don't know who did it. So the Talmud asks, who thinks that the Sanhedrin, they're not hitmen, rabbis with long white beards, they're not Carlo Gambino, they're not Bugsy Siegel, Why do they have to say, we didn't kill this guy? Who would accuse the old rabbis of the Sanhedrin of what? Of being Dutch Schultz, remember him? Murder Incorporated? So the Talmud says, it means we didn't see this guy and we didn't send him away without a meal or an escort. Isn't that incredible? If a stranger comes to town and he has nowhere to stay and you don't give him a meal and then you don't escort him on his way and he gets into a fatal accident, somehow you're responsible indirectly. Isn't that incredible? Why? What? A stranger comes to town, you have to make sure he has a place to eat, and then when he's ready to leave, you have to give him an escort. Isn't that incredible? At least Dalaramas out the front door, at least 8 feet out the front door. Okay? Now, so they say, so why is an escort so important? In fact, the Rambam makes a strange statement. The Rambam says that Achnosas Orchim consists of 3. Achila, Shtia, Leviyah. Food, drink, and an escort. Of the 3, what's the most important part? But I would say the steak and the wine. But Masha, no, the Holy Maimonides says that the escort, when the meal is over, to escort him out the front door at least 10 feet, that's the most important part of the mitzvah. Why is that?
Angel.
Why is that? Beautiful. Don't get ahead of me. Food and drink, even if you give him a nice steak, right? If you give him a Chinese meal, he's hungry in 12 minutes again. But even if you give him a heavy steak meal, in a few hours he's hungry again. The food and the drink, that wears off. It doesn't stay with him. But when you escort him out the front door, Elisheva said, you're giving him good karma. You're giving his neshama kavod. It doesn't wear off like a Chinese meal. Somehow, that escort is giving that person an aura. You hear this? You're giving kavod for the neshama. It stays with that person forever. It doesn't wear off. So therefore, it's the most important part of the mitzvah. You're giving kavod to neshama. And if you don't do that, it happened, a famous story in Vilna. This guy was doing a lot of what? He was giving people food and drink, but he didn't escort them out, and his house burned down. So he asked the Vilna Gaon, I do chesed for people, why did my house burn down? So he said, you didn't do Eshel, you did Eish. You Eish, you gave Achila Shtiyah. Kani, Eish, Achila Shtiyah. You didn't do the Lamed, you didn't do Leviyah, you didn't give him an escort. So, Achila Shtia, what's the Rosh Tevos? Eish, fire. So people don't realize, after you give the guy a good meal, it's super important to escort him out the front door at least 10 feet. You're giving him a good karma, a good kavod for the neshama, and somehow that gives him protection against what? Against evil. There's an aura about him that you give him kavod, you escort him out. He feels good that but you escort him out, that means what? You don't want to get rid of him. You want to see him again. So he's glowing. His neshama is glowing. That will keep him safe from what? Muggers. And if you don't do that, in trouble. So it's important to invite guests, but it's super important when the meal is over to escort him out the front door, because you're giving kavod for the neshama. On Sunday, our talk is it kosher? Is touring a church kosher? If you want to go on a tour, they want to take you into a church. They're not praying there, and the church is not used. Are you allowed to go in there for a tour? That's Sunday at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Good Shabbos.